Vox log fragment. Segmentum obscurus clearance vermilion. Ritual site designated Vespera tertius exhibits resonance anomaly. Warp signature incongruent with projected demonic manifestation. Recommend immediate Ordo Malleus intervention. Emperor preserve us. Last transmission, Astropathic Relay Station, Vespera 9. The dead moon had no name worth remembering. Its designation in Imperial records was a string of numbers and coordinates filed under Condemned World's Nihilus sector. No one lived here. No one could. The atmosphere had burned away millennia ago, leaving only cracked stone and radiation. Perfect for what the word-bearers intended. Magister Carthes Vol knelt before the altar, his power armor scarred with prayers carved into ceramite. Runic script covered every surface, boots, gauntlets, the edges of his pauldrons. Each line was a verse from the Book of Lorgar. Each verse a promise etched in faith and blood. Around him, 17 acolytes chanted, their voices layered into something that wasn't quite language anymore. The sound crawled across the ritual circle like oil on water thick and wrong. Candles burned with flames that cast no warmth. The light they gave was pale sickly. At the center of the circle sat a fragment. Blackstone. Not a shard no larger than a human skull, edges jagged where it had been broken from something far older. The Necrons had built their pylons to hold back the warp to cage gods and silence the Imperium. This piece had been scavenged from a shattered obelisk at the edge of the Nihilus Rift. Carthes had spent 3 years acquiring it. 7 of his brothers had died securing the site. It would anchor the summoning. Draw the demon through. Bind it to real space long enough for the word-bearers to complete their work. Or so the scripture promised. Carthes raised his accursed Crozius. The weapon hummed power field flickering with unnatural light. He spoke the final invocation, each syllable measured precise. The acolytes fell silent. The flames guttered. Then the blackstone fragment pulsed. Not with warp light, not with the rot green of Nurgle or the twisted colors of Tzeentch's madness. This was different. Cold, silent, a void that drank sound and warmth alike. Carthes frowned beneath his helm. The ritual had been designed to call forth a herald of Tzeentch, a creature of change and ambition. Something to crack open the pylons on Vespera and let the great rift spill wider. Instead, the Blackstone was rejecting the offering, pushing back, and then it inverted. The fragment didn't pull a demon through. It reached out into somewhere else entirely. Not the warp, not the materium, a third space, a crack between realities that shouldn't exist. Carthes felt the temperature drop. Frost spread across the stone floor. The acolytes stumbled back, chanting broken. One of them collapsed, blood streaming from his eyes. The Dark Apostle steadied himself. Tzeentch was the architect of fate. Plans within plans. If the ritual had diverted, it was because the God of Change had seen something better. Something the mortal mind couldn't grasp. He would trust. He would endure. The black stone fragment cracked down the middle. Light spilled out. Not warp fire. Not the scream of demons clawing through the veil. This was sharp, clean, a surgical incision in reality. The edges of the tear burned white, then silver, then settled into a deep crimson glow. Something fell through. Nero hit the ground hard. 1 second he'd been standing in the rain-soaked alley, Red Queen still slick with demon blood. The next gravity twisted sideways and dumped him onto freezing stone. His breath misted in the air. Everything smelled wrong, Burnt metal old incense, something chemical he couldn't name. He pushed himself up, boots scraping against frost. The White Queen revolver was still in his left hand. Good. He hadn't dropped it. Around him, hooded figures scrambled back, robes the color of dried blood, armor that looked like it had been through a war and kept the scars as decoration. Symbols carved into every surface, none of them friendly. And at the center, standing over some kind of altar, a massive figure in crimson power armor stared at him. Nero's eyes narrowed. Wrong address, pal. I don't do door-to-door conversions. The armored figure tilted his head. When he spoke, the voice was deep layered with something that made Nero's teeth ache. You are not what was called. Yeah, no kidding. Nero straightened, rolling his shoulders. His right arm, the devil breaker, whirred softly as the mechanisms adjusted. So how about you point me to the exit and we call it even? The word-bearer raised his crozius. Energy crackled along its length, sickly green and wrong. You will serve, or you will burn. Nero sighed. Option 3, I kick your teeth in and find my own way out. He moved. Red Queen came up fast, the sword's internal combustion system roaring to life. Flames licked along the blade as Nero closed the distance in 3 steps. The nearest cultist tried to block him. Nero didn't slow down. He slammed the devil breaker into the man's chest and triggered the wire snatch. The cultist went flying, hit the wall, didn't get up. The Dark Apostle swung his crozius in a wide arc. Nero ducked under it, felt the air crack above his head. Close. Too close. This guy was fast for someone in full plate. Nero pivoted, brought Red Queen around in a horizontal slash. The combustion chambers fired. The blade connected with the Apostle's pauldron in a shower of sparks and flame. No cut. The armor held. Carthus backhanded him. Nero went airborne, crashed into the altar, rolled to his feet, just in time to see the cultists forming a circle, chanting again. The black stone fragment pulsed, still cracked, still leaking that cold light. And then the world inverted. The ground beneath Nero's boots turned liquid. Not warp corruption, not magic. Something else. The fragment was pulling him back toward the tear, dragging him into the rift it had opened. Nero jammed Red Queen into the stone, used it as an anchor. His arm screamed. The devil breaker sparked hydraulics straining. Carthus stood over him, crozius raised. You were summoned to serve the gods. You will serve. Pass. Nero triggered the breaker's overload. Energy discharge lit the chamber white. The cultists scattered. The black stone fragment cracked further, and the rift swallowed him whole. When Nero opened his eyes, he was falling. Not metaphorically, actually falling. Through something that wasn't quite air and wasn't quite space. The rift had spat him out into a sky choked with smoke and ash. Below, a city sprawled, massive industrial rotting. Towers that stretched into the haze. Streets lit by fires that never quite died. And screaming. Lots of screaming. Nero, twisted in midair, saw the ground rushing up. He slammed the devil breaker into the side of a building, fingers digging into corroded metal. The descent slowed. Not enough. He hit a balcony, rolled, came up on his feet with Red Queen already drawn. The screaming was louder now, closer. People ran past him. Civilians, men, women, kids. All of them terrified. Behind them something howled, wet raw, not remotely human. Nero looked at the sword in his hand, looked at the people running for their lives. Guess I'm working. He ran toward the screaming. Arbites Precinct Voxcast, High Vespera Primaris. Emergency frequency. All units code Vermilion. Cultist activity sector 7 Gamma through 12. Civilian evacuation compromised. Requesting PDF support. Repeat, we are not equipped for this. They're herding people toward the altars. Arbitrator Kelvin Thross, Kui. Us, the air tasted like rust and burning plastic. Nero dropped from the balcony into the street below, boots hitting slick pavement. Rain hammered down, thick, oily wrong. The kind of rain that left stains. Everything here was gray. Gray buildings stretching up into a gray sky. Gray streets packed with people running, screaming, dying. And red. Lots of red. Bodies lined the alleyways, some fresh, some not. Nero's jaw tightened. He'd seen demon attacks before. This had that same stink panic blood, the feeling that reality was coming apart at the seams. But the people doing the killing weren't demons. They were human. Robed, masked, chanting in a language that made his ears itch. Cultists. Had to be. They moved through the crowds with purpose, grabbing anyone too slow or too young to fight back, dragging them toward makeshift altars built from scrap metal and old bones. Nero counted 5 altars in visual range, each one surrounded by candles that burned the wrong color. Each one stained with something dark. He didn't need a translator to know what they were for. A woman stumbled past him, clutching a kid to her chest. Maybe 6 years old. The kid was crying, face buried in her shoulder. Behind them, 3 cultists closed in, blades drawn. Nero moved. Red Queen came up fast. The lead cultist didn't even see him coming. Nero's blade took him at the collarbone, angled down. The combustion system fired. The man's torso separated from his legs in a spray of superheated blood. The other 2 turned. Slow, surprised. Nero wasn't. He triggered the Devil Breaker's wire snatch, hooked the second cultist by the neck, yanked him forward into a rising knee. Bone crunched. The man dropped. Third one got smart. Started chanting. The air around him warped colors, bleeding into shapes that shouldn't exist. Sorcery. Great. Nero raised Blue Rose and put 2 rounds through the cultist's chest before the man went down. The warp distortion collapsed, sucking back into itself with a wet pop. The woman stared at him, eyes wide, terrified. "Move," Nero said. "That way. Find cover. Stay low." She ran. Didn't thank him. Didn't need to. Smart. Nero turned, scanning the street. More cultists were pouring out of the side alleys now. Dozens. They moved like a swarm, coordinated, pulling people from buildings and doorways. The altars were filling up. Bodies stacked like firewood. And at the far end of the street, something stepped through. Not human. Not anymore. It had been once, maybe. Now it was 8 feet tall, skin split open to reveal muscle that pulsed with unnatural light. Horns jutted from its skull, eyes like burning coals. It moved on legs that bent backward, claws scraping against stone. A demon. Small one by the look of it. Probably freshly summoned. It saw Nero, grinned. Nero grinned back. Finally, something worth hitting. He charged. The demon met him halfway. Its claws came down in an overhead swing. Nero sidestepped, brought Red Queen around in a horizontal arc. The blade bit deep into the thing's ribs. Fire erupted along the edge. The demon screamed, twisted, backhanded him. Nero hit the wall hard enough to crack stone. His vision blurred. Tasted copper. He spat blood, rolled to his feet just as the demon lunged again. This time he was ready. He triggered the breaker's rocket boost, launched himself up and over the demon's charge. Came down on its back, jammed Red Queen through the base of its skull. Full combustion, maximum burn. The demon's head exploded in a shower of ash and warp fire. Its body collapsed, already dissolving. Nero landed in a crouch, sword still smoking. Around him, the cultists hesitated. Just for a second. Long enough. Blue rose came up. Nero fired methodically. 2 shots per target, center mass. The double-barrel design meant each pull of the trigger sent 2 rounds downrange almost simultaneously. Cultists dropped. The ones that didn't broke and ran. Nero didn't chase them. Wasn't his job. His job was the people still trapped. He moved through the street, cutting down anyone stupid enough to get in his way. Most of the altars were already occupied. Bodies bound with wire and chain. Some still alive, some not. Nero reached the nearest one. A man older, bleeding from a head wound, was tied to the central post. 3 others lay at his feet, throats cut. Nero slashed through the binding. The man fell forward. Nero caught him. "Can you walk?" The man nodded. Didn't speak. Shock, probably. "Then walk. Find somewhere to hide until this blows over." The man stumbled away. Nero turned to the next altar. That's when the shooting started. The PDF troopers came in hard. Armored trucks, flak armor, laser guns that lit up the street in strobing red. They weren't aiming carefully. Didn't need to. Everything in the street was a target. Cultists went down. So did civilians. Nero saw a woman take a las bolt to the spine. Saw a kid, couldn't have been more than 10, catch one in the chest. The PDF didn't slow down, didn't check. They just kept firing. "Hey," Nero shouted. "Cease fire, there are civilians here." One of the troopers turned. Saw Nero, saw the blood on his coat, the sword in his hand, the mechanical arm, raised his laser gun. Nero moved on instinct. Red Queen came up, deflected the first shot. The beam scored a line across the pavement. Second shot went wide. Third never came because Nero closed the distance and put his boot through the trooper's knee. The man went down. Nero didn't kill him. Didn't need to. He turned to the rest of the squad. "I said cease fire." The sergeant, identifiable by the stripes on his shoulder, leveled his weapon. "Stand down, mutant. Imperial authority. Compliance is mandatory." Nero's grip tightened on Red Queen. "These people aren't enemies. They're victims." "Contaminated," the sergeant said flatly. "Protocol dictates purge and containment. Step aside or be designated hostile." Nero looked at the civilians, looked at the bodies already cooling in the street, looked back at the sergeant. "Yeah," he said. "I don't think so." He moved before they could react. Not to kill, to disable. The Devil Breaker grabbed the sergeant's laser gun, crushed the barrel. Nero kicked the legs out from under another trooper, sent him sprawling. The rest backed up, weapons trained but uncertain. Behind them, engines roared. Heavier vehicles, transport trucks. And marching between them, figures in gray armor that looked like it had been forged from storm clouds and blades. Power armor. Serious power armor. The lead figure stepped forward. Taller than Nero by a head, shoulders twice as wide. Armor covered in script and seals. A sword hung at his hip, massive, etched with runes. The other hand held a storm bolter barrel, still smoking. The helmet turned toward Nero. No face. Just a blank faceplate and a single red optic lens. When he spoke, his voice was like granite grinding against steel. "Unidentified entity. You will stand down. You will submit to containment. Resistance will be met with terminal force." Nero's eyes narrowed. He could feel it now. The pressure radiating off these guys. Not warp taint. Something else. Purer, colder. Demon hunters. Had to be. I'm not your enemy, Nero said carefully. I just killed a dozen cultists and one of their pets. Pretty sure that puts us on the same side. The armored figure raised his storm bolter. Your nature is warp adjacent. Your origin unknown. You are a contamination risk. Compliance. Nero glanced at the civilians huddled behind him, looked back at the armored warriors. They weren't bluffing. He could see it in their stance. One wrong move and this street would turn into a meat grinder. He let Red Queen's combustion die down, raised his hand slowly. All right. You want to talk, we'll talk. But those people... He nodded toward the civilians. They get to walk. Non-negotiable. The lead warrior didn't respond immediately, just stared, evaluating. Then from somewhere behind the line of armored figures, a new voice cut through. Cold, female, precise. Acceptable. Isolate the civilian population. Quarantine and observe. The entity comes with us. A woman stepped forward, not armored like the warriors. She wore a long coat, dark red, lined with fur. Symbols hung from chains around her neck. Her face was hard, angular eyes like chips of ice. An inquisitor. Nero didn't know the word. Didn't need to. She looked at him the way someone might look at a specimen under glass. Your cooperation will be noted, she said. Your survival is conditional. Nero's jaw tightened. And if I don't cooperate? She smiled. It didn't reach her eyes. Then you burn with the rest. The armored warriors moved in, surrounded him. One of them produced a set of shackles ornate covered in engravings that hurt to look at. Nero didn't fight. Not yet. He let them lock the cuffs around his wrists, felt the pressure immediately. Something in the metal suppressed his power, made his blood feel sluggish. As they led him toward the transports, he looked back at the civilians. The woman he'd saved earlier was watching. The kid in her arms stared at him with wide eyes. Nero nodded once, turned away. The transport doors slammed shut. Darkness, and the sound of engine. Grey Knight's tactical assessment. Brother Captain Arvon Stern. Entity exhibits dual nature resonance, warp adjacent but not corrupted. Origin point unknown. Dimensional breach consistent with Xenos or Heretic interference. Recommend containment protocols, secondary psychic examination, and immediate neural compliance testing. If entity resists, sanctification execute. Timestamp 14:22. High Vespera command, Nexus. The cell was silent. Not quiet. Silent. The kind of absence that pressed against eardrums and made breathing feel too loud. Nero sat on the bare metal bench wrists, still locked in the ornate shackles. His head throbbed. The walls around him were covered in symbols carved deep, filled with something that glinted silver in the dim light. He'd tried testing the restraints once. The shackles had responded by sending a spike of cold straight through his nervous system. Not pain exactly. Worse. Like his blood had turned to ice water and his bones to lead. So he sat and waited. The door opened without sound. No hiss of hydraulics, no warning, just suddenly open. 3 figures entered. The first 2 were the armored warriors from the street. Gray plate. Storm bolters mag-locked to their thighs. Nemesis Force halberds held at parade rest. Their helmets tracked him with mechanical precision. The third was different. Taller, broader. Authority radiated from him like heat from his armor was the same storm gray, but more ornate. Purity seals hung from his pauldrons. A skull human gilded was mounted on his chest plate. The sword at his hip was easily as long as Nero was tall. He stopped 3 paces from the bench, stared down through that blank faceplate. "I am Brother Captain Arvin Stern of the Grey Knight's Third Brotherhood." His voice was deep controlled, every word measured. "You are an unknown variable in a war zone designated for exterminatus consideration. Your cooperation will determine your immediate fate." Nero met his gaze, or where his gaze would be if the helmet had eyes. "Cooperation sounds like Imperium speak for do what we say or die." "Correct." At least he was honest. Stern gestured. One of the other Grey Knights stepped forward, holding something that looked like a data slate crossed with a torture device. Wires, needles, a screen that flickered with script. "Nero, you will submit to psychic examination," Stern said. "We will determine the nature of your power. If you are found corrupted, you will be cleansed. If you resist, you will be destroyed." Nero's jaw tightened. "And if I pass your test?" "Then you become an asset, temporarily." Stern's tone didn't change. "The Word-Bearer's ritual that brought you here was attempting to open a stable warp conduit. They failed. The question is whether they failed completely or whether you are the intended result." "I'm not working for chaos," Nero said flatly. "Your intent is irrelevant. Corruption does not require consent." The Grey Knight with the device moved closer. Nero tensed. The shackles grew colder. "Easy," he said, forcing his voice level. "I've fought demons before. Killed plenty. If I was corrupted, you'd already know." Stern tilted his head slightly. "Demonstrate." "What? Your nature. You want me to adhere with these?" He raised his shackled wrists. "The wards will hold, or you will die attempting to break them. Either outcome provides data." Nero laughed. It came out harsh, bitter. "You guys are real charmers, you know that." He stood slowly. The shackles hummed, suppressing the familiar heat that lived in his chest. Devil Trigger was buried deep, locked down by whatever these restraints were made of. But the surface layer, the basic combat instinct that he could still touch. He focused. Pulled. The Devil Breaker sparked. Just once. The mechanisms fought against the suppression, whining in protest. Red Queen, confiscated and sitting on a table against the far wall, vibrated slightly. And for just a moment the air around Nero shimmered. Not warp distortion. Not the oily wrong color of chaos. Something cleaner, hotter. Then the shackles clamped down hard. Nero gasped, dropped to one knee. The cold surged through him, killing the flame before it could fully ignite. Stern watched, silent, evaluating. Finally, warp adjacent, but not of the warp. Interesting. He turned to the other Grey Knights. "Begin the litanies. If he breaks during sanctification, we know the truth." They didn't use the device. They used words. The Grey Knights formed a triangle around him, Stern at the apex. They began to chant. Low, rhythmic, Latin or something close to it. The syllables had weight, each one pressed against Nero's skull like a physical thing. The wards on the walls flared. Silver light bled into the air. The temperature dropped further. Nero gritted his teeth. This wasn't an attack, not directly, but it felt like one. The chant was designed to break apart anything touched by chaos, to rip corruption out by the roots and burn what remained. He could feel it digging, searching, looking for cracks. His blood burned in response, not with demonic fury, with something older, the part of him that was Sparta's lineage. Devil blood didn't bow to gods or demons. It carved its own path. The chant grew louder. Nero's vision blurred, his hands clenched into fists. And then, nothing. The chanting stopped. Stern lowered his halberd. Nero was still kneeling, still breathing, still himself. Stern studied him for a long moment, then nodded once. He endures. No demonic anchor detected, no mimetic corruption, no secondary consciousness. One of the other Grey Knights spoke. He could be a sleeper agent. Tzeentch favors long gambits. Possible, Stern acknowledged, but unlikely. The word-bearer's ritual was crude, desperate. If this were a planned infiltration, the architect would have sent something subtler. He turned back to Nero. You will accompany us. You will obey tactical commands. You will not engage Imperial personnel without clearance. Deviation will result in immediate sanction. Nero stood slowly. His legs felt like jelly. And what exactly am I accompanying you to do? Before Stern could answer, the door opened again. The Inquisitor stepped through. She looked exactly as she had in the street. Cold, precise, in control. Behind her, a servo skull floated its mechanical eyes, clicking as they focused on Nero. "Brother Captain," she said. Her voice was clipped professional. "Status: entity cleared for provisional deployment, Inquisitor Kyra." Stern didn't salute, didn't need to. The respect was in the tone, barely. No taint detected. Psychic resistance abnormal but stable. Kyra's gaze shifted to Nero. Abnormal, how? His power is not warp-derived. It does not draw from the Imperium. Origin unknown. She stepped closer, circled him once, examining. Her servo skull mirrored her movement recording. "Fascinating," she murmured. "A weapon that functions outside the warp's influence. The Mechanicus will want samples." Nero's eyes narrowed. "I'm not a weapon, and I'm definitely not giving anyone samples." Kyra smiled. It was thin, sharp. "You misunderstand your position. You are currently designated a hostile xenoform of unknown origin. The only reason you still draw breath is because you may prove useful. That designation can change." She pulled a data slate from her coat, tapped it twice. A hologram flickered to life above the surface. It showed a map, a planet, structures that looked like they'd been carved from black glass. "Necron pylons," Kyra said. "Black stone constructs designed to suppress warp activity. There is a network of them on Vespera buried beneath the primary hive. The word-bearers are attempting to corrupt the network. If they succeed, the resulting warp rift will consume this system and potentially destabilize 3 adjacent sectors." Nero studied the map. "And you want me to stop them because you can survive in a null field." Kyra tapped the slate again. The image zoomed in on one of the pylons. The black stone generates a suppression field that weakens warp-based entities. Demons, psychers, even the Grey Knights experience reduced efficacy in close proximity. "But you," she gestured at him, "your power is not warp-based. You should function normally." "Should," Nero repeated. "Preliminary analysis suggests high probability." She closed the slate. "You will accompany Strike Force Stern to the pylon complex. You will eliminate any word-bearers conducting rituals within the null field. You will assist Mechanicus personnel in stabilizing the network." And then, Kyra's expression didn't change. "And then we decide whether to grant you the Emperor's mercy or execute you as a security risk." Nero laughed, short, humorless. You people really know how to make a guy feel welcome. This is not a negotiation, Kyra said coldly. This is a battlefield conscription. Refusal is treason. Treason is death. Choose. Nero looked at Stern. The brother captain stood motionless, waiting. He thought about the civilians in the street, the woman with the kid, the bodies stacked at the altars. Fine, he said. I'm in, but I want something in return. Kyra raised an eyebrow. You are in no position to bargain. The people I saved, the ones you quarantined. Nero stepped forward. The shackles hummed a warning. He ignored it. When this is done, they walk. No observation, no execution. They get to live. Stern shifted slightly. The halberd in his hands didn't move, but Nero felt the attention sharpen. Kyra studied him, silent, calculating. Those civilians have been exposed to warp corruption. Standard protocol requires observation for no less than 40 days. Many will need to be purged. Not good enough. You would jeopardize your own survival for strangers. Yeah, Nero said. I would. Something flickered in Kyra's eyes. Not warmth. Recognition, maybe. She'd seen zealots before. People willing to die for principles. This was different. Simpler. Very well, she said finally. Prove your worth in the field. Return with actionable intelligence or confirmed kills. The quarantine survivors will be re-evaluated. Some may be cleared. All of them. I will not promise what I cannot guarantee. The Imperium does not negotiate with contamination. She turned toward the door. But I will ensure the evaluation is thorough. Survivors with clean records may be granted clemency. It wasn't a victory, barely a concession. But it was something. Nero nodded once. Kyra glanced at Stern. Prepare him. You deploy at dawn. The Mechanicus has identified 3 ritual sites in proximity to Pylon Tertius. Neutralize them. Recover any data. And brother captain, yes, Inquisitor. If he shows any sign of corruption, any at all, you will kill him immediately. No hesitation, no debate. Stern inclined his head. Understood. Kyra left. The servo skull followed eye lenses dimming as it passed through the doorway. Stern turned to Nero. The shackles will remain until deployment. You will be fitted with a translator implant to facilitate communication. The Mechanicus will handle the procedure. Translator? Nero frowned. I'm speaking your language right now. You are speaking Low Gothic. Battlefield commands are issued in Cant Bellum and High Gothic liturgical code. Without proper translation matrices, you will be a liability. Great. Brain surgery. And if I refuse the implant? Stern's tone didn't change. Then you remain confined until the Inquisitor determines your final disposition. Nero sighed. Guess I'm getting an implant. One of the other Grey Knights stepped forward, producing what looked like a surgical kit. Nero eyed the instruments. None of them looked friendly. This is going to suck, isn't it? Stern's helmet turned slightly. It might have been amusement. Hard to tell. Yes, he said. It will. The Grey Knight with the kit gestured toward the bench. Nero sat. The last thing he saw before the anesthetic took hold was the gleam of silver instruments and the sterile glow of the cell's lights. Then darkness. Mechanicus augmentation log. Magos, Vectrian, Kolos. Subject unclassified xenoform designation, Asset Tertius. Procedure Lex Mechanic Cortical Integration, Dual Lobe Targeting for Cant Bellum Reception and High Gothic Liturgical Decryption. Anesthesia administered. Subject vitals stable. Commence rite of implantation. Omnissiah guide the electrode. Timestamp 0417. High Vespera, Medici Vault. Waking felt like surfacing through ice. Nero's first coherent thought was that the silence had texture now. It wasn't absence anymore, it was layered. Beneath the quiet hum of machinery, he could parse individual frequencies. A generator cycling 3 floors down. Hydraulic pistons in the walls, maintaining atmospheric pressure. The faint crackle of Vox static bleeding through sealed channels. He opened his eyes. The ceiling above was vaulted, ribbed with steel beams that curved like the inside of a cathedral. Red light filtered through gaps in the architecture, casting everything in rust-colored shadows. His skull ached. Not pain pressure. Like something new had been wedged into the space behind his left ear and the base of his neck. When he tried to move, the sensation sharpened into pins and needles that ran down his spine. A voice cut through the layered quiet. Mechanical. Precise. Neural integration registers at 92% efficiency. Acceptable parameters. Nero turned his head slowly. The bench beneath him was cold metal unpadded. To his right stood a figure draped in crimson robes, so dark they were nearly black. The fabric hung in geometric folds, weighted by chains and medallions. Mechadendrites, segmented mechanical limbs, extended from beneath the robes like spider legs, each one tipped with a different tool. One held a data slate. Another clutched what looked like a drill. The figure's face was mostly gone. What remained was augmented, half flesh, half chrome. A single organic eye stared down at Nero from beneath a brass cowl. The other socket held a lens assembly that clicked and refocused with insectile precision. "You are awake," the Magos observed. His voice came from a Vox skrill embedded in his throat, flat and toneless. "This is optimal. Conscious feedback improves calibration." His wrists felt light without the shackles, though the phantom sensation of suppression lingered. Red Queen and Blue Rose sat on a nearby table, cleaned and inspected. The Devil Breaker rested beside them, disassembled into component parts. Nero's pulse spiked. "What did you do to my arm?" "Examination only." The Magos gestured with a mechadendrite. The servo arm clicked twice a motion that might have been reassurance. "Your prosthetic exhibits technological sophistication, inconsistent with Imperial standards. I required data." "Put it back together." "Of course." The Magos' organic eye blinked once, slow, deliberate. "But first demonstrate function." One of the mechadendrites extended toward Nero, offering a small metallic cube. "Grip pressure test, standard protocol." Nero took the cube, squeezed. It crumpled like tin foil. He tossed it back. The Magos caught it with a servo claw, already recording measurements. Hydraulic output exceeds baseline human capacity by factor of 9.3. Fascinating. "And the energy discharge mechanism observed during containment." "Not your business," Nero interrupted. "We done here?" The Magos tilted his head. The lens assembly whirred. "Your hostility is noted. However, cooperation benefits both parties. I provide you with communication capacity. You provide me with knowledge. I'm not a lab rat." "No." The Magos' Vox skrill emitted a sound that might have been agreement. "You are a tool of unknown origin operating outside established frameworks. Tools must be understood before deployment. This is doctrine." Nero slid off the bench. His legs held, though his balance felt off. The implant's presence kept pulling his attention inward like a splinter he couldn't reach. How about you understand this? I'm here to stop your ritual problem. After that, I'm gone. No samples, no blueprints, no tech priests taking apart my gear while I sleep. The Mygos was silent for 3 seconds. Then, acceptable. Temporary operational alliance. However, another mechadendrite extended this one, holding the reassembled Devil Breaker. I will observe field performance. Data acquisition remains permissible within mission parameters. Nero took the prosthetic, checked the seals and joints. Everything looked intact. He locked it onto his right arm, felt the familiar weight settle into place. The mechanisms hummed to life, responsive. Fine. Observe all you want. Just stay out of my way when things get ugly. Acknowledged. The Magos turned toward a workbench lined with instruments that gleamed like surgical knives. Your Lex Mechanic implant is now active. You will comprehend battlefield cant and liturgical command structure. Side effects may include auditory sensitivity, mild vertigo, and involuntary translation of ambient low gothic into multiple dialect matrices. Nero rubbed the translation. I'm gonna have a headache. Probable. A door at the far end of the chamber hissed open. Brother Captain Stern entered, flanked by 2 gray knights. Their armor caught the red light, turning storm gray to charcoal. Stern carried his halberd at rest, but Nero could feel the readiness in his stance. Magos Kolos, Stern stated without preamble. Is the asset operational? Affirmative. Neural integration complete. Subject cleared for tactical deployment. Stern's helmet tracked to Nero. That blank faceplate gave nothing away, but Nero felt the weight of evaluation. Follow. They moved through corridors lit by flickering lumens. The walls here were older than the Medici vault stone. Instead of steel carved with icons Nero didn't recognize. Skulls, eagles. 8 pointed stars crossed out with jagged lines. The air smelled like incense and gun oil. Stern walked ahead, his armored boots ringing against the floor in rhythmic percussion. The 2 gray knights trailed behind Nero close enough that he felt their presence like a wall at his back. You will be issued standard pattern munitions, Stern explained as they walked. His voice echoed in the enclosed space. Your weapons are primitive but functional. Mechanicus analysis indicates compatibility with Imperial bolt rounds for your sidearm. Red Queen. He paused, the name foreign in his mouth, will remain unmodified. Good, Nero muttered. She doesn't play nice with upgrades. They descended a wide staircase. At the bottom, a heavy blast door stood open. Beyond it, Nero glimpsed organized chaos soldiers moving in formation, servitors hauling ammunition crates, servo skulls darting overhead like mechanical vultures. The command center. Inquisitor Kyra stood at the room's heart, surrounded by hololithic projections. Maps floated in the air, terrain overlays. Enemy positions marked in red, friendly forces in blue. Brother Captain, status. Asset prepped and armed, awaiting final mission parameters. Kyra's fingers moved through the hololith, zooming in on a section of the map. 3 structures became visible, arranged in a triangle around a central point. The central point pulsed with dark energy. Pylon Tertius, she stated. Necron Blackstone construct 11,000 years dormant. Wordbearers have activated 3 ritual sites in proximity here, here, and here. She tapped each location. Their objective, invert the pylon's polarity and convert it from warp suppression to warp amplification. Nero studied the map. And if they succeed, cascade failure across the entire network. The resulting rift would consume Vespera within 48 hours. Adjacent systems within a week. Kyra finally looked at him. Her expression remained unreadable. Exterminatus protocols are authorized. If we cannot secure the pylon, we sterilize the planet. How many people live here? 14 billion. Approximate. 14 billion. Nero felt something twist in his chest. Back home, that would be unthinkable. Here Kyra said it like she was reading shipping manifests. Your mission is straightforward, she continued. Strike Force Stern will assault ritual sites 1 and 2. You will infiltrate Site 3, the closest to the pylon core. Mechanicus intelligence suggests the null field intensity there exceeds tolerances for warp-based combatants. You, however, she gestured at him with one gloved hand, should maintain full combat effectiveness. Should, Nero repeated. That word keeps coming up. Kyra's smile was thin. Theoretical models are rarely perfect. Consider this a field test. Stern interjected. Site 3 is also the most fortified. Long-range augury indicates high demon concentration and significant warp corruption. You will proceed alone, Vox contact only. If you fail to neutralize the ritual within the operational window, Strike Force Stern will withdraw and initiate Exterminatus sequence. Alone. Nero crossed his arms. No backup, no extraction plan. Just walk in, kill everything, and hope I don't get buried when you blow the planet. Correct. And the people in quarantine, the ones I saved? Kyra accessed a data slate scrolled briefly. Observation continues. Current count 63 survivors. 14 have been cleared of taint. 49 remain under review. If you succeed in your mission, I will personally advocate for lenient reevaluation. That's not the deal. The deal, Kyra said quietly, is that you have the opportunity to save them by proving yourself useful. Nothing more, nothing less. This is the Imperium. We do not trade certainties for hope. Nero held her gaze. Behind him, he felt the gray knights shift slightly, ready to intervene if this turned hostile. He thought about the woman with the kid. The old man tied to the altar, the bodies stacked like firewood. Fine, I'm in. Kyra nodded once. You deploy in 30 minutes. Gear up. Brother Captain Stern will oversee final preparations. She turned back to the hololith, already dismissing him. And one more thing. Nero waited. The null field will drain you. Not immediately, but prolonged exposure causes neural fatigue, disorientation, eventual collapse. Even for baseline humans. We don't know what it will do to you. She didn't look at him. Try not to die before the mission is complete. They armed him in silence. The armory was all function racks of weapons ammunition, sorted by caliber armor stands, holding flak vests and carapace plating. Nero declined the armor. Too heavy, too slow. He fought better when he could move, but he took the ammunition. A tech priest loaded blue rows with bolt rounds, each one blessed with oils and stamped with purity seals. The gun felt heavier now, meaner. Red Queen received a fresh fuel canister for the combustion system. The blade gleamed under the armory lights. Stern watched from the doorway. You will maintain Vox discipline. Report enemy contact. Report ritual status. If you encounter anything outside expected parameters, withdraw immediately. And if I can't withdraw, then transmit final intelligence and die with honor. Nero strapped Blue Rose into its holster. You guys really know how to motivate a person. Motivation is irrelevant. Only results matter. Outside engines roared. Through the armory's narrow window, Nero saw Valkyrie gunships warming up on the landing pad. Rain hammered against their hulls. black rain thick with industrial runoff. Lightning forked across the sky, illuminating the hive's upper spires. "Transport leaves in 10 minutes, Stern stated. Magos Kolos will accompany Strike Force Stern to provide technical support. You will insert via drop pod at the pylon perimeter." Drop pod. Nero tested the weight of his sword. "You're going to shoot me out of a cannon." "Essentially." "Great." The Vox system crackled to life. A voice flat mechanical echoed through the armory. "All units stand by for deployment. Ritual activity escalating. Enemy contact imminent." Stern turned toward the door. "Time to move." Nero followed him out into the rain. The landing pad was Chaos soldiers running servitors hauling ordnance servo skulls transmitting target data. The Valkyries squatted like metal insects, ramps down engines. One gunship sat apart from the others. Smaller, meaner. Its hull was painted matte black, covered in warding sigils. The drop pod was maglocked to its undercarriage, a coffin-shaped shell of ceramite and ablative plating. Nero stared at it. "You're serious?" "Completely." Stern gestured toward the pod. "Get in." Nero climbed the access ladder. Inside the pod was barely wide enough for one person. Crash webbing lined the walls. A single viewport, tiny, reinforced, offered a view of nothing but rain and darkness. He strapped in. The harness bit into his shoulders. Through the viewport he saw Stern raise one gauntleted hand. A signal. The hatch slammed shut. Hydraulics hissed. The world became the size of a coffin. Vox static crackled in Nero's ear, the implant translating processing. Then Stern's voice, clear and cold. "Drop in 30 seconds. Emperor, guide your blade." Nero gripped Red Queen's hilt, felt the Devil Breaker's mechanisms cycle through a self-diagnostic. The gunship lifted off. Through the tiny viewport, Nero watched Hive Vespera fall away, a sprawl of lights and smoke and burning rain. Somewhere below, the pylons waited. Ancient, sleeping, cracked, and the word-bearers were trying to wake them up. 10 seconds, Stern's voice announced. 5, 4, 3. The drop pod released. Nero's stomach inverted as gravity took hold. The viewport filled with fire as the pod hit atmosphere. G-forces crushed him into the webbing. His teeth rattled. The hull screamed, and through it all, beneath the roar of descent, he swore he heard something else, whispering. Inquisitorial Memorandum, Kyra designate. Quarantine Zone, Gamma 7 Population 63. Taint screening ongoing. Preliminary results, 14 cleared, 22 indeterminate, 27 exhibiting secondary markers. Recommend immediate purge of indeterminate cases per Protocol Vixilum 9. Hesitation breeds contamination. The Emperor's mercy is a bullet, not a prayer. Timestamp 0642. Authorization pending. The pod impact had driven Nero into the mud 3 meters deep. Extracting himself took minutes of cursing and hydraulic strain. When he finally hauled himself onto solid ground, the landscape around him defied every instinct that screamed wrong. The terrain spread flat and lifeless gray ash coating everything like old snow. Structures jutted from the wasteland, at odd angles, half-collapsed industrial towers and geodesic domes that had buckled under their own weight. The sky overhead churned with clouds the color of infected tissue. And the silence. Not absence of sound. Pressure, like standing inside a bell that had just stopped ringing. Every footstep landed softer than it should. The wind made no noise when it scraped past broken metal. The null field, already working on him. His sword hung heavier at his hip. Each breath took deliberate effort. The implant behind his ear translated the Vox chatter bleeding through his earpiece. Tactical can't position reports litanies, but the words arrived muffled distant. Asset insertion confirmed. Proceed to waypoint Alpha. Confirm. Stern's voice, clinical, expecting obedience. Nero keyed the Vox. Yeah, I'm down. Site 3 is... He paused, scanning the horizon. 3 kilometers northeast, a structure rose from the ash-black glass and twisted rebar pulsing with light that shouldn't exist in this dead place. Visual confirmed. Moving. Maintain Vox discipline. Report deviations immediately. The channel cut. Nero started walking. The ash muffled his boots. Behind him, the drop pod's retro thrusters still glowed cherry red, the only warmth for kilometers. He didn't look back. The first body appeared after 50 meters. PDF trooper. Face down, las burn through the spine. The corpse had been there long enough for the ash to start. Nero crouched, turned the body over. Young, maybe 20. Eyes still open, staring at nothing. No mutation, no warp taint. Just dead. Nero straightened, scanned the area. More bodies. Dozens. PDF Arbite civilians in work clothes. They formed a trail leading away from the ritual site toward what looked like a prefab shelter complex, half buried in the ash. The quarantine zone. His pulse hammered. The Vox had said 63 survivors. These weren't survivors. These were the ones who didn't make it that far. The shelter complex loomed ahead. Razor wire circled the perimeter. Guard towers stood empty las rifles, abandoned in the firing positions. The main gate hung open, twisted off its hinges. Inside, the screaming started. Not panic. Procedure. Nero broke into a run. The null field dragged at him, made every step feel like moving through deep water. The sword slapped against his leg. His lungs burned. He ran. Arbites in full riot gear formed a firing line. 20 men, carapace armor shotguns loaded with solid slugs. In front of them, civilians knelt in the ash hands, bound heads down. The woman from the street was there. The one with the kid. The child clung to her face, buried in her shoulder. Neither of them looked up. An Arbites officer stood apart from the line, reading from a data slate. His voice carried no emotion, just facts. Subjects 74 through 91. Quarantine protocol violation. Exposure to unverified warp phenomena. Per inquisitorial mandate, immediate sanction authorized. The woman's shoulders shook. The kid whispered something Nero couldn't hear. The officer lowered the slate, raised his hand. Wait! Nero's voice cut across the courtyard. Every head turned. The Arbites swung their weapons toward him. Red dots painted his chest. Stand down. These people are clean. The officer's expression didn't change. Unknown combatant. Identify. Nero. Attached to Strike Force Stern. Inquisitor Kaira's orders. Credentials? Don't have any. Call it in if you want. But those people, he gestured at the kneeling civilians. They were cleared. Kaira said they'd be re-evaluated. Evaluation complete. The officer consulted his slate. Subjects exhibited behavioral inconsistency during secondary screening. 14 cleared. Remainder flagged for termination. Behavioral inconsistency. The words tasted like poison. What does that mean? Non-compliance with interrogation protocols, failure to recite litanies, inappropriate emotional response to stimuli. The officer looked at him. Standard markers for early-stage corruption. The woman lifted her head. Her eyes met Nero's, wide, terrified, pleading. She didn't look corrupted. She looked exhausted. You're killing them because they're scared. The words came out flat. Dangerous. We're containing a threat. The officer's hand remained raised. This is Imperial law. If you interfere, you will be designated hostile. These are the people I saved. Nero's hand drifted toward his sword. The Arbites tensed. I made a deal. Your deal is irrelevant. A new voice, cold, female. Kyra stepped from the shelter entrance. No guards, no servo skull. Just her wrapped in that dark red coat, hands clasped behind her back. She surveyed the courtyard with the detachment of someone inspecting cargo manifests. Inquisitor, the officer acknowledged. The asset is interfering with sanction protocols. I can see that. Kyra walked forward. Her boots left precise prints in the ash. She stopped 3 paces from Nero. You were deployed to neutralize Ritual Site 3, not to involve yourself in quarantine operations. You said they'd be reevaluated. They were. This is the result. This is murder. Kyra's expression didn't shift. Murder implies injustice. This is triage. 14 and 22 remain indeterminate, insufficient data to confirm clean status. 27 exhibit markers consistent with early-stage mimetic infection. She gestured at the kneeling civilians. These 49 represent unacceptable risk. The Imperium cannot afford mercy where contamination is possible. They're not infected. They're traumatized. Trauma can be a vector. Kyra's voice remained level. Chaos does not require consent. It exploits weakness, fear, grief, love. Her eyes locked on his. These people have been exposed to warp phenomena. Their minds are compromised. If even one harbors latent corruption, they could trigger cascade failure across the entire quarantine population. Nero's hand closed around his sword hilt. So you kill all 49 to save 14, to save billions. Kyra tilted her head slightly. This is the calculus of survival. You may find it distasteful. I find it necessary. The kid started crying, soft, broken. No. Nero drew the blade. The combustion system ignited. Flame licked along the steel. I'm not letting this happen. The Arbite's firing line adjusted. Every weapon trained on him. The officer's hand twitched toward his sidearm. Kyra raised one palm. The Arbites held. Consider carefully, she said quietly. If you attack Imperial forces, you become traitor. I will have you executed. The quarantine survivors, all of them, will be purged. Your intervention saves no one. It only adds your name to the casualty list. Then I'll take as many of you with me as I can. You won't. Kyra's certainty was absolute. You're fast, skilled. But there are 20 Arbites here, another 40 in the shelter, and 2 Grey Knights on approach. You will die, they will die, and your sacrifice accomplishes nothing. The blade shook in his grip. Rage and helplessness warred in his chest. She was right. He knew she was right, and he hated her for it. But, Kyra continued, there is an alternative. What alternative? Complete your mission. Neutralize Ritual Site 3. Return with confirmed intelligence on word-bearer operations. She stepped closer. Do this, and I will personally review the indeterminate cases. Those without hard evidence of taint will be cleared. Not all 49, but some. How many? I cannot guarantee a number, but I will advocate for maximum clemency within operational parameters. Her expression remained unreadable. This is more than regulations permit. I offer it because you may prove valuable. Do not mistake it for kindness." The woman with the kid watched him, waiting, hoping. Nero lowered his blade. The flames died. "If I do this, you swear you'll try." "I swear nothing. I commit to policy adjustment within my authority." Kyra turned toward the officer. "Delay sanction 30 minutes. Await my direct authorization." The officer saluted. "Compliance." Kyra faced Nero again. 30 minutes. That is your window. The ritual site is 2 kilometers northeast. Move. Nero sheathed the sword. Didn't trust himself to speak. He met the woman's eyes one last time, tried to convey something, anything, then turned and walked. Behind him, the kid cried. The Arbites didn't lower their weapons. The ash swallowed sound. The null field pressed. Ahead, the ritual site pulsed with wrong light. 30 minutes, 49 lives, 1 mission. He ran. The terrain shifted as he closed distance. Ash gave way to cracked stone. The buildings here were older, pre-Imperial, maybe. Necron architecture, all sharp angles and black glass that drank light. Glyphs covered the walls, geometric and precise. And beneath it all, the whisper. Not audible. Deeper. Like words spoken directly into bone, the null field suppressed warp presence, but this crept through anyway. Patient, subtle, impossible to ignore. Left. 3 steps left. The voice had weight. Familiarity. Almost Nero stopped. The sword came up on instinct. Who's there? Silence, just wind scraping stone. He scanned the ruins. Empty, dead. The null field made everything flat, 2-dimensional. No shadows moved. No sounds betrayed presence. You want to save them. There, ahead. A flicker at the edge of vision. Not quite movement. More like the air remembering something had been there. We can help. Bullshit. Nero's voice sounded hollow in the dead air. You're word bearers. You don't help anyone. We serve the architect. The architect sees all possible futures. In one you succeed. The woman lives. The child lives. All you must do is walk into your trap. Is choose the right door. The flicker solidified. Not a person. A shimmer. Like heat haze given form, and within its shapes that might have been faces. Might have been memories. One looked like Kyrie. Not exact. Close enough. Same dark hair, same soft eyes. The kind of eyes that looked at him like he was worth saving. That's not real. His grip tightened on the sword. The blade refused to ignite. Something in the null field was dampening even that. You're in my head. We are in all heads. But only yours matters. 1 step left instead of right. 1 door instead of another. 1 life saved instead of sacrificed. The Kyrie shape stepped closer, reached out. Her hand passed through solid stone without resistance. The Imperium gives you 30 minutes. We offer you eternity. Time enough to save everyone. Time enough to return. All it costs is my soul. Nero spat into the ash. I've heard this before. Demons love their deals. Not your soul, your direction. The whisper multiplied became chorus. Walk where we suggest. Save who we indicate. Fight what we reveal. Nothing changes, except everything lives. The null field flickered. For 1 heartbeat, warmth flooded back. His blood sang. The sword roared to life, flames bright enough to hurt. Then the suppression slammed down. Heat died. The blade guttered. His chest ached with sudden cold. Choose. The quarantine dies in 28 minutes. Or you trust us. And everyone walks. The Kyrie shape smiled. Sad, pleading, not Kyrie, never Kyrie, just bait shaped like hope. Nero turned his back on it. Get out of my head. The whisper fractured, became snarl. Fool. We gave you mercy. Keep it. He walked toward the ritual site. The shapes followed for 30 meters, then dissolved into ash. The cold deepened. Ahead, the structure pulsed black glass tower wrapped in light that bent wrong. The vox crackled. Stern's voice cut through. Asset status. Moving on target. 26 minutes to deadline. Nero's breath misted despite the lack of cold air. Contact with enemy psyker activity. They tried recruitment. I declined. A pause, then acknowledged. Maintain focus. The Inquisitor's offer stands. Complete mission. Extract. Do not deviate. Copy. The channel died. 26 minutes. Nero broke into a jog. The ritual site grew larger. Through gaps in the tower, he glimpsed movement-robed figures chanting something writhing in the central chamber. Word-bearers. Finally. Something he could hit. The entrance yawned ahead. No guards, no wards. Just open door and darkness beyond. Too easy. Probably a trap. Definitely a trap. Nero drew his blade. This time the combustion system caught. Weak, guttering. Better be enough. He stepped through the door. The darkness swallowed him whole. Encrypted Eldar transmission source unverified. The Mon key stumbles toward the stage we prepared. Thread 57 unfolds cleanly. The Laughing God's jest requires one actor who believes himself free. Let him dance. Let him bleed. Let him think salvation costs nothing. Timestamp unknown. Location unknown. Inside the ritual site, combat lasted 11 seconds. The word-bearers had left 3 cultists as guards. Nero killed 2 before they finished turning. The third managed to raise a stub pistol. Blue Rose answered. The double report echoed through the chamber, then died in the oppressive quiet that smothered everything here. No altars, no demons. Just an empty room with sigils carved into every surface and a tunnel leading deeper. They'd evacuated before he arrived. Tzench had played him exactly right, sent him to an empty stage, while the real performance happened elsewhere. Rage flared hot, then guttered against the null field's pressure. The Vox barked static. Status report. Stern, impatient. Site's empty. They cleared out before insertion. Nero scanned the chamber. Following tunnel network. Tracking. A sound cut him off. Distant. Muffled by stone and ash. Screaming. Not combat. Terror. His blood went cold. The timeline Kaira gave him had 17 minutes left. They'd started early. Asset acknowledge. Nero killed the Vox. Sprinted for the exit. The tunnel system beneath the ritual site was old. Pre-Imperial. Necron construction, all geometric precision and angles that hurt to track with human eyes. The screaming grew louder as he ran. His boots hammered against stone that had been smooth 11,000 years ago. The passage opened into a junction. 3 routes. The screaming came from the left. So did the gunfire. Nero burst into a wider chamber. PDF troopers lined one-wall lace guns trained on a cluster of civilians pressed against the opposite side. The woman was there. The kid. 24 others, all on their knees, all waiting. A commissar stood between the groups reading from a data slate in that same flat monotone Nero had heard in the courtyard. Contamination risk exceeds acceptable parameters. Sanction authorized under Protocol Vexillum 9 subsection. Nero shot him. Blue Rose kicked twice. Both rounds took the commissar in the chest. The man went down. The data slate clattered across stone. Every PDF trooper swung toward the new threat. Last bolts seared the air. Nero was already moving blade-drawn combustion system roaring to life, despite the null field's drag. He closed distance in 3 strides. The first trooper died before he could adjust his aim. Red Queen sheared through the laser gun, through flak armor, through ribs. The second trooper managed to fire. The beam scored Nero's shoulder. He didn't slow. The Devil Breaker caught the man's helmet, crushed it like tin. The remaining troopers broke, ran. Nero let them go, turned to the civilians. The woman stared at him. The kid clung tighter, face still buried. "On your feet," Nero growled. "We're leaving." Nobody moved. "Now." They scrambled up. 26 people, most injured. A new voice crackled through the chamber, not Vox but loudspeaker. Tinny, official. Quarantine breach detected. Lockdown protocols initiating. All personnel withdraw to safe zones. Cleansing teams inbound. Cleansing teams. Flamers and phosphex. The Imperium didn't take chances. The woman found her voice. Where do we go?" Good question. The tunnel he'd come through led back to the ritual site. Dead end. The passage the PDF had used was already sealing blast doors, grinding shut red warning lights, spinning, which left the third route, unlit, unmapped, leading deeper into the Undercity, also their only option. "Follow me, stay close. Anyone falls behind, I can't wait." Harsh, true. Understood, nods. The woman shifted the kid to one hip, freeing a hand to help an older man with a shattered leg. They moved. The passage sloped downward. Emergency lumens flickered to life as they passed, casting everything in sickly yellow. The walls here were different, older construction, pre-Necron even. Stone carved by human hands millennia ago, now slick with moisture and mold. Behind them, doors boomed shut. Ahead, the tunnel branched, and branched again. A labyrinth. Nero chose paths on instinct. Left, right, straight. The civilians followed, breath-ragged boots scraping stone. The kid had stopped crying. Shock, maybe. Or exhaustion. The null field grew stronger as they descended. Each step felt heavier. The sword in Nero's hand dimmed flames, sputtering. His chest tightened. Blood moved sluggish in his veins, and the walls began to shift. Not physically, perceptually. Shadows fell wrong. Lumens flickered in patterns that spelled words in languages Nero didn't know. The temperature dropped, then spiked, then dropped again. Tsinch. Still playing. A voice whispered from the dark, familiar, feminine. "Nero, honey, you're going the wrong way." Nico's voice, the mechanic. His friend, not real. Couldn't be. He kept walking. "Serious, kiddo. You want the left fork. Trust me on this." The left fork led toward stronger null pressure. Toward the pylon, toward whatever ritual the word-bearers were conducting. Exactly where Chaos wanted him. "Right it is," Nero muttered. Veered right. The passage tightened, became a crawl space. The civilians balked. "Through," Nero ordered. "I'll bring up rear." The woman went first, pushing the kid ahead. The others followed. Slow, too slow. Behind them, footsteps echoed. Heavy, armored, stormtroopers. The cleansing teams. Nero crouched at the crawlspace entrance. Waited. When the first trooper rounded the corner, Nero put a bolt round through his faceplate. The second got 3 paces closer, before Blue Rose spoke again. The rest retreated. Bought maybe 2 minutes. Nero crawled through, emerged into a chamber that defied geometry. The space was too large for the structure above it. The ceiling rose into shadows that the lumens couldn't penetrate. Pillars carved with Xeno's script supported nothing. And in the center, standing on a dais that hadn't been there a moment ago, a figure waited. Tall, slender, wrapped in a cloak that shifted colors like oil on water. A mask covered its face, ceramic blank, unsettling in its perfection. One hand held a staff topped with crescents and symbols Nero didn't recognize. The figure tilted its head, studied him. When it spoke, the voice came from everywhere and nowhere. The Red Queen's Cavalier. How delightfully literal. Harlequin. Had to be. The civilians clustered behind Nero. The woman pulled the kid closer. Nobody spoke. "You're lost," the Harlequin observed. Not a question. A statement of fact. The Monkey built this maze thinking straight lines would save them. They were wrong. They always are. Nero kept his blade up. "If you're here to help," it sounded like glass breaking. "Help, no. We do not help. We balance, we observe, we ensure the jest unfolds correctly." The figure gestured with the staff. Behind it, a section of wall shimmered, then split. Beyond, a passage glowed with faint bioluminescence. "That leads to the surface, 3 kilometers northwest, outside Imperial cordons. Your charges may escape." May. "The path is unstable. It was not built for your kind. Some will fall. Some will be lost. Perhaps half survive." The mask turned toward the civilians. "Unless you would prefer certainty, the cleansing teams offer that. Everyone dies. Equally, fairly." The woman's breath hitched. The kid whimpered. "Why show us this?" Nero demanded. "Because the performance requires it." The Harlequin stepped aside. The bioluminescent passage beckoned. "And because you will proceed regardless. You are predictable. All Monkey are. You see suffering and reach for it, like children reach. We are sane. You are blind." The figure raised the staff. The chamber trembled. "Choose quickly. The cleansing teams breach in 90 seconds. I grow bored." Nero looked at the civilians, at the woman, at the kid. They'd survived the quarantine, the purge, the chase. They deserved better than maybe. They deserved certainty. But certainty in this place meant death. "Go!" Nero pointed at the passage. "Move fast. Don't stop for anything. If someone falls, keep going." The woman hesitated. "What about you?" "I'll buy time. Now move." They ran, filed through the shimmering wall one by one. The old man limped. A teenage girl helped him. The kid looked back once, eyes wide. Then they were through. Gone. Nero turned to the Harlequin. "The way out. Will it hold?" "Until the second moon rises, or until the 12th soul crosses. Whichever comes first." The mask tilted. "You Monkey are so concerned with absolutes, life, death, truth, lies. You miss the dance between. Just answer the question." I did. The figure began to fade, colors bleeding into the stone. "You simply lack the wit to understand." Fitting. "Your role requires ignorance." The voice grew distant. "When you stand before the stone that drinks gods, remember we offered you escape. You chose descent." The harlequin vanished. The passage remained open. Bioluminescence pulsed, inviting. Behind Nero, explosions boomed. The crawlspace collapsed in a shower of rubble and flame. Phosphex rounds burning white eating stone. The cleansing teams were here. Boots stomped, orders barked, flamers roared. Ahead the passage beckoned. Freedom, survival. Away from the pylon, away from the word-bearers, away from everything that brought him here. Nero sheathed his blade, turned toward the fire. The vox sparked to life. Stern's voice cut through cold and final. "Asset, you have deviated from mission parameters. Return to tasking or be designated rogue." Nero reactivated the channel. "I saved 26 lives. They're out. Job done. Your job is ritual neutralization. Civilian extraction was not authorized." "It's authorized now." A pause. Then, "Inquisitor Kyra has been notified. She demands immediate compliance or she can add it to the list of things I don't care about." Nero started walking toward the fire, toward the stormtroopers. "Tell her I'm going after the word-bearers. Site 3 was a decoy. They're deeper in, near the pylon. You cannot proceed alone into Watch Me." Nero killed the vox again. Drew his blade. The combustion system caught despite the null field. Weak flame, better than nothing. The first stormtrooper emerged from the smoke. Nero put him down with a throat shot. The second fired a plasma round. Nero rolled, came up slashing. The blade sheared through the trooper's rifle, then his arm. 3 more appeared. Near lightning, arced, fried targeting systems sent armored bodies sprawling. He pushed through the breach, into the fire, into the smoke. Behind him, the bioluminescent passage sealed, collapsed, gone. 26 lives bought. 1 promise kept. Everything else was just work. The tunnel ahead angled downward, deeper. The null field thickened. Every breath dragged, every step sank. And from the dark below, a new sound rose. Chanting. Liturgies. The word-bearers had begun. Nero ran toward it. Tactical Vox cast, Strike Force, Stern Priority, Vermilion. All units fire mission confirmed. Ritual sites 1 and 2 neutralized, 43% casualties sustained. Site 3 remains active. Null field interference severe. Advancing to pylon perimeter. Enemy resistance extensive. Mechanicus Asset Coloss, reporting polarity inversion at 14% and climbing. Time to critical mass unknown. Emperor guide our blades. Brother Justicar Valdor K. Wine. A 7 minutes post-transmission. The sky burned. Orbital bombardment rained down in pillars of light that turned night into noon. Each impact shook the ground hard enough to crack stone. The ritual complex, 3 kilometers of corrupted Necron architecture wrapped around the central pylon, erupted in sequential detonations as Navy macro cannons found their marks. But the word-bearers had built deep. Layers of blackstone and ceramite absorbed the worst. What the bombardment couldn't reach the demons defended. Strike Force Stern hit the perimeter in a thunder of teleportation. 20 gray knights materialized inside the outer defensive ring storm bolters already firing. Cultists died in the opening salvo, bodies torn apart by mass-reactive shells blessed in the blood of saints. The demons came next. They boiled out of breaches in reality, drawn by the rituals still burning at the complex's heart. Lesser demons, first pink-skinned horrors that shrieked in voices that bent perception. Bloodletters followed brass, and rage given form. The air split with their arrival. Warp stink flooded the perimeter. Stern's halberd carved the first demon in half before it finished manifesting. His voice rang out in high gothic litanies that made the air vibrate. The Grey Knights formed a wedge, each warrior a pillar of discipline wrapped in sanctified ceremate. Advance by fire teams. Secure altar positions. No quarter, no hesitation. They moved like clockwork. Precision. Brutality. A demon lunged at Brother Cassian. Storm bolter fire shredded its torso. The creature collapsed, already dissolving. Another Grey Knight, Valder, swept his blade through 3 cultists, chanting around a totem. They died mid-syllable. The word-bearers responded with coordinated fury. Bolter fire raked the Grey Knights from fortified positions. Heavier weapons, autocannons, las cannons, opened up from bunkers carved into the blackstone. One beam caught Brother Ferris in the shoulder joint. Ceramite cracked. The warrior stumbled, recovered, kept advancing. Contact heavy. East quadrant compromised. Stern's response was immediate. Seal it. Use phosphex if needed. No acknowledgement required. The Grey Knights pivoted. Flamers roared. White fire ate through cultist lines, through barricades, through anything not sanctified or armored. And through it all, the null field pressed. It was subtle at first, a dampening. Litanies that should have thundered felt muted. The warp resonance that let Grey Knights sense demonic presence grew foggy. Stern could feel it in his bones, the pylon's suppression field bleeding into everything, making the Imperium harder to touch. The demons felt it too. They moved slower, manifested incomplete. One horror tried to split into duplicates and failed, body collapsing into ichor. The word-bearers had planned for this. Their forces were mortal traitor marines, corrupted guard zealots who needed no warp gifts to kill. They held the choke points with disciplined fire. Every meter cost. Brother Valdor advanced too far. A cracked grenade took him at the knee. He went down. A cultist rushed forward with a chainsword. Stern's stormbolter ended the threat. But Valdor didn't rise. Brother down. Continue advance. No pause. No morning. 300 meters south, a Valkyrie gunship screamed in low. Its cargo bay slammed open. A single figure dropped. The landing cratered pavement. When the dust cleared, the hunter stood. Sword already drawn. Flames guttering in the null field's pressure, but burning nonetheless. Eyes tracking threats with predator focus. The Vox crackled. Stern's voice clipped and tactical. Asset deployed. Advance northeast. Clear corridor Gamma 7. Grey Knights will exploit breach. No acknowledgement requested. The hunter moved. Cultists swarmed from a trench system. 20, 30. More behind them. Lays guns barked. Stubbers chattered. Red Queen came up in a rising arc. The combustion system fired despite the suppression, devil blood fueling what warp tech couldn't. The first cultist's torso separated at the sternum. The second lost his head. The third died before his brain registered the threat. Blue Rose spoke twice. 2 cultists fell, chests cratered. The survivors broke for ran. A mistake. The Devil Breaker's wire snatch hooked one fleeing cultist, yanked him back into the blade's path. Another tried to throw a grenade. A bolt round from Blue Rose detonated it in his hand. 15 seconds. 30 bodies. The corridor opened. Vox chatter exploded. Breach confirmed. Advancing. Gray knights poured through the gap the hunter had carved. They didn't acknowledge him. Didn't slow. Just flowed past like a tide of silver and ceramite reciting litanies as they killed. The hunter kept moving. Deeper. The architecture changed, less imperial fortification, more ancient blackstone. Glyphs covered every surface. Necron script that predated humanity. Some of the symbols glowed faintly pulsing in rhythm with something far below. The null field thickened. Each breath took effort. The sword's flames dimmed to embers. Blood moved sluggish. Reflexes lagged. And ahead the chanting grew louder. Not imperial hymns, not the screams of darker. Words in Colchisian scripture twisted through millennia of corruption. The language of the word. The hunter rounded a corner into an antechamber. 40 word-bearers knelt in concentric circles around an altar carved from black stone. Their armor was crimson, scorched by battles spanning 10,000 years. Prayers covered every surface scripture etched directly into ceramite written in the blood of martyrs and the ash of burned worlds. At the center, a figure stood, taller than the rest. Power armor decorated with bones and scrolls. An accursed Crozius in one hand, a bolt pistol in the other. His helmet was off. The face beneath was human once. Now it was a canvas ritual scars forming prayers, eyes replaced with black orbs that wept oil. The Dark Apostle. He turned, looked directly at the hunter, smiled. The Red Queen's Cavalier, the devil who does not bow to gods, the key that thinks itself a blade. The hunter raised his sword. You're the one who pulled me here. Bad call. No. The Dark Apostle gestured. The kneeling word-bearers didn't move, didn't react. The architect pulled you. I merely spoke the words. You came because you always come, because you are predictable. Then you know what happens next. I do. The apostle's smile widened. You kill these 40 brothers. You break this altar. You think you've won. He raised the Crozius. Power crackled along its length, and in doing so, you complete the circuit. The polarity inverts. The pylon becomes gate. The gate becomes maw. The hunter's grip tightened. You're saying I'm part of your ritual. You are the ritual. Devil blood. Warp adjacent but uncorrupted. Power that functions where ours fails. The apostle stepped forward. The word-bearers rose as one bolter's leveling. The architect saw all futures. In most we summon demons. They burn in the null field. We fail. But in one thread, one perfect thread, a devil comes. And the devil's nature bridges what we can. I'm not helping you. You already have. By surviving, by fighting, by descending. The apostle's voice dropped to something almost gentle. Every step brought you closer. The harlequin showed you the path. The whispers guided your choices. And now you stand precisely where you must. Kill us. Destroy the altar. It changes nothing. The ritual completes when your blade strikes Blackstone. The hunter's blood ran cold. Not metaphor, actual cold. The null field was drinking warmth from his veins. You're bluffing. Am I? The apostle raised his free hand. Behind him the altar pulsed, and beneath it, through gaps in the floor, something vast stirred. The pylon's polarity is already inverted. 14% and climbing. When it reaches 37, the cascade becomes irreversible. You have... He consulted nothing, simply knowing 11 minutes. The Vox crackled. Stern's voice strained. Asset status, report. The hunter keyed the channel without looking away from the apostle. I found them. 40 word bearers, 1 leader. He says I'm part of their plan. Static, then explain. They built the ritual around me. Killing them might trigger it. A pause. Calculations running behind that cold, disciplined mind. Then Stern's voice returned. Flat, final. Irrelevant. Eliminate the enemy. We will handle consequences. The channel cut. The Dark Apostle laughed. It sounded like rocks grinding. See, even your handlers understand there is no winning, only choosing how you lose. The hunter stepped forward, blade raised. Then I lose my way. The word-bearers opened fire. Bolt rounds screamed through the chamber. The hunter was already moving, rolling behind a pillar. Blackstone exploded where he'd stood. He came up shooting. Blue Rose barked. One word-bearer's helmet cracked. The traitor Marine staggered, but didn't fall. Veterans of the Long War. The hunter triggered the Devil Breaker. Lightning arced, grounded against power armor. It bought a second. He used it to close distance, blades sweeping in a low arc. The combustion system roared. A word-bearer lost his leg at the knee. Fell. Another lunged with a chainsword. Steel met steel. Sparks flew. The hunter pivoted, used the momentum to drive his elbow into the Marine's faceplate. Ceramite cracked. He followed with the blade. The word-bearer went down. 38 left. Bolter fire intensified. The hunter dove behind the altar. Rounds chewed through Blackstone. He rolled, came up on the opposite side, fired twice. Another helmet shattered. The Dark Apostle watched. Didn't fight. Just watched. 11 minutes, he said calmly. 10 now. The hunter charged. 3 word-bearers blocked his path. He killed the first with a throat slash, the second with a point-blank bolt to the chest. The third caught him with a backhand that sent him flying. He hit the wall hard. Vision blurred. Tasted copper. The word-bearers advanced. Methodical, unhurried. The Vox screamed. Multiple channels overlapping. Gray Knights calling contacts. Mechanicus reporting polarity spikes. Inquisitor Kiera's voice cutting through. Prepare exterminatus, authorization. Stand by for command. The hunter pushed himself up. Spat blood. Raised the blade. The Dark Apostle tilted his head. 9 minutes. Will you make it? Answer came from above. The ceiling exploded. Gray Knights dropped through the breach, halberds ignited, storm bolters firing before they landed. Stern led the drop. His blade took a word. Bearer's head off in the same motion he touched down. Purge them all. The chamber became a kill box. Gray Knights against word-bearers. Sanctity against corruption. Discipline against zealotry. Stern fought with cold efficiency. Each strike measured. Each kill necessary. No wasted movement. The hunter joined the assault, blade and bolter working in tandem with halberd and litany. They didn't coordinate. Didn't need to. The Gray Knights advanced. The hunter carved roots. The word-bearers died. But slowly. Too slowly. The Dark Apostle remained untouched, standing by the altar, watching. 8 minutes. Stern's voice cut through the Vox. Magos Kolos. Status on polarity. The Mechanicus Tech Priest's response was layered with static. 18%. Acceleration detected. Estimate critical threshold in 6.3 minutes. Faster than projected. Affirmative. Recommend immediate withdrawal and orbital. An explosion cut the transmission. Stern didn't pause, didn't acknowledge the loss. He cut down another word bearer and advanced on the Dark Apostle. You will cease your ritual. The Apostle smiled. It is already ceased, and already complete. Your blade or his, it matters not. Strike the altar. End me. The mathematics are written. Stern, the hunter, grabbed his arm. Wait. If he's right, he is corrupted. His words are poison. Stern's voice held no doubt. We kill them. We destroy the altar. This is our function. And if that's what he wants, then we deny him satisfaction. Stern pulled free. But we do not deny duty. The halberd came down, the altar shattered, the null field inverted. For one heartbeat, warmth flooded back. The hunter's blood sang. Power surged. Then it collapsed inward, harder, colder, a void that drank everything. The Dark Apostle laughed as he died. The key turns, the door opens. May you drown in what you freed. The floor beneath them cracked. Beneath the black stone, something vast and hungry stirred, and the pylon began to scream. Silence had texture now. Not absence, pressure. Like standing inside a tomb, while reality forgot how to make sound. Nero's boots struck stone but produced nothing. His breath moved air that refused to carry vibration. Even his heartbeat hammering against ribs registered as sensation without noise. The null core swallowed everything. The passage descended through black stone carved. His armor, sanctified ceramite wrapped in prayers, steamed faintly, where the null field met blessed metal. Through the helmet's vox grill came a sound Nero had never heard from him before, labored breathing. Asset. Stern's voice crackled with static. I cannot proceed further. The suppression exceeds. A pause, words chosen carefully, tactical limits. Translation, even gray nights had breaking points. Nero looked back. How far can you hold? This position, 10 minutes, perhaps 12. No shame in the admission, just fact. Beyond that, neural degradation becomes critical. The others, withdrawing to perimeter. Mechanicus personnel have already evacuated. Static washed through the channel. You are alone. Nero turned back to the descending passage. Somewhere below the pylon's heart waited, beating, bleeding reality. Copy. He kept walking. Each step took longer than the last. Gravity increased, or his body weakened. Hard to tell. The null field wrapped around him like water, if water could drown fire. Devil blood that had fueled him through 100 battles now moved thick and cold. Reflexes lagged. Vision narrowed. The passage opened into a chamber, spherical, enormous. The walls curved up and away into darkness that even Necron lumens couldn't penetrate. At the chamber's center, suspended by nothing visible, a structure hung. The pylon's core. Not stone, not metal. Something that existed between states solid when observed directly, translucent when glimpsed peripherally. Glyphs covered every surface, rotating slowly through dimensions. Nero's eyes refused to track. Looking at it too long made his skull ache. And beneath it, through cracks spreading like veins through the chamber floor, light bled upward. Warp fire trying to push through suppression that was designed to keep it out. The polarity had inverted. Vox static crackled. Not Stern. Someone higher in the chain. Asset, this is Inquisitor Kyra. Acknowledge. Nero keyed the channel. I'm here. Status of core structure. He looked at the cracks, at the light bleeding through, at the pylon suspended above, rotating slowly as mathematics failed. It's breaking. Polarities inverted. Warps trying to come through. Mechanicus confirms. Cascade is irreversible at current progression. Her voice remained level. Clinical. Exterminatus authorization has been granted. Fleet is targeting macro cannons on your position. You have 4 minutes to extract. 4 minutes. The passage back would take 6. At his current speed, maybe 8. Nero's jaw tightened. What about the quarantine survivors, the civilians I pulled out? Minus 61, out of millions, out of billions. And the rest, silence. Then, acceptable losses. Extract immediately or be caught in the bombardment. His hand closed around the sword's hilt. Metal bit into his palm. There's another option. Negative. The core cannot be stabilized. All modeling confirms. Your modeling is wrong. Nero stepped closer to the pylon. The null field thickened. His chest tightened. Breathing became work. I'm still standing, still moving. Your psychers can't. Your knights can't. But I can. A pause. Calculations running behind that cold mind. Explain your proposal. I stay. I hold the pylon stable long enough for full evacuation. Then I trigger controlled collapse. Directional, inward instead of outward. Your survival probability under that scenario approaches 0. I know. Another pause. Longer. Then Stern's voice cut in, layered with static and strain. Asset. Theoretical models suggest you could function as anchor, stabilization point. How long would I need to hold it? Stern's response came slow, forced. 23 minutes for full evacuation of remaining population centers. Longer if 23 minutes. Nero looked at the pylon, at the cracks, at the light bleeding through. And then what? Then you sever the connection. Collapse becomes localized. High Vespera and immediate surroundings consumed. Outer sectors survive. Millions dead instead of billions. Still a massacre. Still grim dark. But not total. Kyra's voice returned. This plan violates multiple protocols. You are an unclassified asset of unknown origin. Trusting you with system-level consequences is the only option you have left. Nero cut her off. Your fleet's already firing. Your knights can't reach the core. Your Mechanicus can't model this because it's never happened before. So either you let me try, or you watch 14 billion people burn. Tuosion silence. Just the hum of the null field, the slow rotation of the pylon, the creak of reality bending. Finally, acknowledged, proceed. Strike Force Stern will hold perimeter and coordinate evacuation. You will maintain Vox contact until, she paused, until conclusion. Translation until he died. Understood. The channel stayed open. Background chatter flooded through. Evacuation orders. Transport manifests. Casualty projections, delivered in the same tone as weather reports. Nero approached the pylon. Up close it was worse. The geometry hurt. Angles that folded through spaces his brain couldn't parse. The glyphs rotated faster, cycling through configurations that might have been language or might have been mathematics or might have been the same thing. He reached out. The moment his hand touched the surface, reality inverted. Pain wasn't the right word. Pain implied nerves firing. This was deeper. Cellular. Every atom in his body screamed as the null field and warp bleed met in his flesh. He was the bridge, the connection point between suppression and eruption. Devil blood that functioned outside normal rules became the conduit. His vision whited out, then redded, then showed him things that didn't exist. Spaces between spaces, the skeleton of reality where laws were written in fire. The Vox exploded with overlapping transmissions, polarity stabilizing, evacuation preceding transports lifting, unknown energy signature at core analyzing. Nero couldn't respond, could barely think, just held on, forced his will against the pylon's collapse. The devil blood in his veins became anchor, became lock, became the thing holding catastrophe it couldn't release. The pylon drank his strength and gave back nothing but pressure that crushed thought into single-minded determination. Hold. Just hold. Stern's voice cut through the static, distant, strained. 18 minutes elapsed. Population centers evacuating. Continue holding. Nero tried to acknowledge, couldn't form words, just held. The cracks beneath his feet widened. Warp light surged. The pylon rotated faster. The null field and warp bleed fought for dominance, and he was caught between, being torn in directions that didn't exist. His body started shutting down. Extremities went numb first, fingers locked around the pylon. Couldn't feel them anymore. Just knew they were there, because they had to be. Vision tunneled. Just the pylon, just the light, just the rotation. Heartbeat slowed. 80 beats per minute, 70, 60. Not enough oxygen. The null field was drinking it, or his lungs had forgotten how to pull. Hard to tell. Evacuation at 78%. Maintain position. He was maintaining. Didn't have a choice. Couldn't let go if he wanted to. The pylon had him now. Or he had it. Same thing. His blood turned to ice. Not metaphor. Actual cold spreading from core to skin. Devil blood that burned hot enough to ignite swords now freezing in his veins. The null field winning. Slowly, inevitably. He was dying. Knew it. Could feel it. Cells shutting down one by one. Metabolism grinding to halt. Brain firing slower. Thoughts becoming sluggish. But not yet. Not until they were out. 22 minutes. Final transports departing. Asset prepare for severance on my mark. Severance. Gentle word for let go and collapse reality. Nero tried to nod. Couldn't move. Just waited. The Vox crackled one last time. Kyra's voice. Still clinical, but something underneath it now. Not warmth, recognition. Your actions will be recorded. 61,000 sector population preserved at 42%. This is acceptable outcome. A pause. You have our gratitude for what it is worth. It was worth nothing and everything. Stern's voice replaced hers. 23 minutes. All transports clear. Initiate collapse on your discretion. Discretion, as if he had any. Nero pulled, not physically. The pylon had fused to his hands. He pulled inward, with will, with blood, with the last reserves of power that devil heritage had given him. The true devil trigger had one more use. He'd never pushed this far before, never needed to. But here, at the edge of death, caught between warp and null, holding catastrophe by fingernails, there was no other option. His blood ignited. Not flame. Something older. The power that Sparta's line carried. The thing that let devils walk where gods couldn't. It burned through the null field suppression because it wasn't warp, wasn't materium, was something third, and it was enough. The pylon shattered. Not exploded, imploded, collapsed inward with mathematical precision. The null field and warp bleed met in annihilation. Reality folded. The chamber compressed, and Nero was at the center. The last thing he heard before unconsciousness took him was the sound of stone screaming. Then nothing. Inquisitorial seal classified. Ordo Malleus, clearance obsidian. Incident Vespera null, hereby classified under Terminus Protocol. All records expunged. All witnesses mind-scrubbed or terminated. Entity designated Asset Tertius recategorized Anomaly Prime / Potential Threat / Do Not Engage Without Sanction. Survival of 61,412 souls noted. Casualties 4.7 million, immediate 8.2 million, projected secondary collapse. Sector quarantined indefinitely. This file will self-immolate upon reading. Ave Imperator. Inquisitor Kyra. Authorization final. The pylon didn't explode. It folded. Reality compressed around Nero like a fist closing. The chamber spherical vast became a point. The null field and warp bleed met in his flesh and annihilated each other. For one infinite second, he was everything and nothing. Bridge and breach, lock and key. Then physics remembered itself. The implosion reversed. Space snapped back. The shockwave expanded outward in a ring of absolute silence. No sound. No light. Just the presence of something fundamental breaking. Demon matter evaporated. Word-bearer corpses dissolved mid-scream. The ritual circles carved into stone cracked and sealed simultaneously. Warp fire trying to push through the cracks, guttered, choked, died. And in the epicenter where the pylon's core had hung, a wound, opened in reality. A scar. Nero hung suspended in void. His body had shut down past the point of death, and somehow continued. Devil blood, that third thing between warp and materium, kept him tethered to existence by will alone. The true devil trigger burned through him, not flames, but gravity. Pure, condensed refusal to stop. His eyes saw layers. The physical chamber existed. Simultaneously, the warp trying to bleed through existed. And between them, the null field drinking both dry existed. All three states occupied the same space. The scar was stable, barely. Held together by his 20 meters away through dimensions that geometry shouldn't permit, he saw gray knights retreating, stern dragging a wounded brother. The perimeter collapsing inward as the null effect expanded. Their mouths moved in litanies he couldn't hear. Nero tried to release his grip. The pylon, what remained, refused. Fused. Cellular level. His DNA had bonded with Blackstone at the molecular structure. To let go meant tearing himself apart. So he tore. The pain transcended nerves, transcended thought. Every cell screamed as he pulled inward, compressed his will into a single command. Break. The connection severed. Nero fell. Consciousness returned in fragments, cold deck plating against his cheek. The hum of void ship engines. Medikey equipment beeping in rhythms that felt wrong after the silence. He opened his eyes. White ceiling, sterile, Imperial medical bay. The lighting was too bright. Everything hurt. A servo skull floated into view. Red eye lens focused. Clicked once. Transmitted data somewhere. Footsteps. Heavy, ceramite on metal. Stern stood at the foot of the bed. No helmet. The face beneath was scarred, austere, impossible to read. Gray eyes studied Nero with the detachment of someone cataloging a specimen. You survived. Statement, flat. Nero's throat felt like gravel. How long? 73 hours since collapse. You were recovered from the epicenter. Vital signs ceased for 41 minutes during extraction. Stern's expression didn't shift. You should be dead. Yeah. Nero tried to sit up. Failed. His body weighed too much. Happens a lot. The null collapse consumed High Vespera and 17.3 kilometers radius. 4.7 million casualties confirmed. Secondary collapse zone extends 40 kilometers. Warp translation impossible within the affected region. Projected duration indefinite. Millions. Gone. The evacuees. 61,412 extracted successfully. Currently undergoing screening. 14% flagged for observation. The remainder will be resettled. Stern paused. Your intervention preserved them. Preserved? Clinical word for saved. Nero closed his eyes. The null scar. Is it stable? Mechanicus analysis is ongoing. Preliminary assessment, the affected zone suppresses warp activity at 97% efficiency. Daemons cannot manifest. Psychers experience neural trauma upon approach. Astropathic communication fails. Stern's voice held something that might have been respect. You created a dead zone. Permanent. A weapon they couldn't control. An outcome they hadn't planned. Inquisitor Kyra's orders. Stern's expression went flat. You are to be transferred to secure containment pending classification review. Your nature remains unknown. Your capabilities exceed projections. You represent a threat. Nero opened his eyes. I get it. A variable. Stern corrected. The Imperium does not tolerate variables. They stared at each other, warrior to warrior, both too damaged to pretend otherwise. Finally, Stern spoke again. The Inquisitor has granted 48 hours before transfer. Use them wisely. He turned, stopped at the door. Your weapons and equipment have been returned. They could not be properly stored. The Mechanicus tried. 3 tech priests suffered neural feedback. The door sealed behind him. Nero lay still, stared at the ceiling, felt the weight of millions dead and thousands saved pressing against his chest. Acceptable outcome. He'd heard those words before. They still tasted like ash. The null scar pulled at him. 36 hours after waking, Nero stood at the edge of the affected zone. Sterile observation deck, reinforced viewports showing the wasteland below. Where High Vespera had stood, only blackened stone remained. The sky above churned with clouds that moved wrong. And at the center, invisible but present, the wound in reality persisted. He could feel it, like a frequency only his blood could hear. The scar called, recognized him, wanted him back. It's beautiful in its way. Nero didn't turn. He recognized the voice from the Vox transmissions. Inquisitor Kyra stood beside him, hands clasped behind her back. Her face remained unreadable. 4 million people died, Nero said. 8 billion did not. Kyra's tone didn't soften. That is the calculus we live by. You understand this now. Doesn't mean I accept it. No. But you acted within it. She gestured at the viewport. That scar will persist for centuries, perhaps millennia. It will be studied, weaponized if possible. The Mechanicus believes it could be replicated. Nero's blood went cold. Don't. That decision is above both our stations. Kyra pulled a data slate from her coat. Your official record has been expunged. You were never here. This incident, the survivors will be mind-scrubbed. The casualties attributed to Warp Storm. And me. Classified. Potential asset. Potential threat. Do not return to Imperial space. If you do, termination protocols are authorized. She held out the slate. Your exit has been arranged. The null scar creates dimensional instability. Warp translation fails. But rifts form, temporary, unstable. One will open in 6 hours. It leads elsewhere. Nero took the slate. Coordinates, timing, precise. Why help me leave? Kyra's expression shifted, almost smiled. Because you are more useful as myth than prisoner. And because, she paused, you kept your word. 61,000 lives. That is worth something. She turned to leave. Stopped. One more thing. The Grey Knights want you to know you fought with honor. They will not pursue. The Inquisition, however. She let the sentence hang. Then she was gone. Nero looked back at the scar, at the wound he'd carved into reality, at the price of surviving. 6 hours. He had work to do. Rain hammered the alley. Cold, clean. Nothing like Vespera's toxic downpour. Nero stepped through the rift and it sealed behind him. Reality stitched itself closed. The wound between universes healed. Mostly. A faint shimmer remained barely visible, easily missed. A scar on this side, too. He recognized the street. 2 blocks from the office. Home. His body ached. The null exposure had left marks, fine silver lines across his skin, like fractal lightning. His right arm the one that it held. The pylon trembled slightly. Permanent damage. Mechanicus had warned him. Nerve deterioration might heal, might not. He walked. The city hadn't changed. Same neon, same traffic, same people rushing through rain without looking up. A world that didn't know how close it had come to hell. Better that way. The office door was unlocked. Lights on. Nero pushed it open. Dante sat behind the desk, boots up, magazine in hand. He glanced up. Did a double take. Kid, you look like you went 10 rounds with a garbage truck and the truck won. Nero managed half a smile. Something like that. Dante's casual posture didn't shift, but his eyes tracked every detail. The scars, the tremor, the way Nero moved like every step cost. Where have you been? Somewhere else, somewhere bad. Clearly. Dante tossed the magazine aside, leaned forward slightly. You gonna talk about it? Nero thought about the pylon, the collapse, the millions dead, the thousands saved, the Imperium's cold calculus, the scar that would persist for millennia. Not yet. Dante nodded, understood what wasn't being said. You need anything? Yeah. Nero dropped into the other chair. His body sagged with exhaustion that sleep wouldn't fix. Tell me something stupid happened while I was gone. Dante grinned. Well, there was this guy with a demon sword who thought he could... The story washed over Nero. Familiar, normal, human. Outside, rain continued. The city breathed. Life continued. And somewhere in the space between worlds, a scar remained. Silent, permanent, waiting. The door had closed. But scars never truly healed. Mechanicus Research Log / Vespera Null Scar Study. Year 1, post-incident scar remains stable. Warp suppression at 97%. 3 explorateur teams lost attempting deep analysis. Recommend observation only. Year 5, Necron Tomb World detected beneath scar epicenter. Readings suggest awakening cycle initiated. Recommend immediate intervention. Request denied. Zone remains quarantine. Year 12 Orc. WA gravitating toward null zone. Projected arrival 3 to 7 years. Threat assessment critical. Recommendation exterminatus. Authorization pending. Year 23 entity designated anomaly. Prime detected in redacted sector. Description matches asset Tertius profile. Inquisitorial kill team dispatched. Result team lost. Entity escaped via unknown means. Updated threat assessment extreme. Do not engage. Personal log by Dante. Nero came back different. Doesn't talk much about where he went. Sometimes catches him staring at his arm, like it's not his anymore. The scars don't fade. Neither does the look in his eyes when he thinks nobody's watching. Kid's always been stubborn. But there's something else now. Like he stood too close to something vast, and it left a mark deeper than skin. He'll talk when he's ready. Or he won't. Either way, he's home. That's gotta count for something. The Vespera Null Scar became legend and warning alike. Within a decade, the suppression zone attracted threats the Imperium couldn't ignore. Necron tomb complexes stirred beneath the dead hive drawn by the absence of warp interference. Orc wags gravitated toward the anomaly, sensing something worth fighting. The scar had become a beacon for everything the null field was designed to repel. Mechanicus' attempts to weaponize the effect failed catastrophically. 3 Forge Worlds lost research teams. The Inquisition archived all data under Terminus seal. But the myth persisted. Across the Imperium, nihilist survivors whispered of the Red Devil, a warrior who broke chaos rituals, defied inquisitorial authority, and carved permanent wounds into reality itself. Some called him Saint. Others, Daemon. The Ordo Malleus knew the truth. He was neither, and therefore more dangerous than both. The scar remains. Permanent. Unhealing. A reminder that some victories are indistinguishable from catastrophe, and some heroes are too costly to celebrate. The Imperium does not forget. It simply pretends it does.
If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel, and be sure to turn on notification so you won't miss our future videos. Thank you for watching, and we will see you next time.